Hello there! Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to take a deep dive look into the Mandalorian Season 3 episode titled The Spies. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Plus, Force Ghost Conversations is now live on Patreon. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Hey everybody, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. Wow, what a doozy of an episode that we got here with The Mandalorian this week. I mean, Rick Famuyiwa knocked us out with a knockout punch on Season 3, Episode 7, The Spies. Goodness gracious, I can't wait to get into this episode with you all. But this would be Cloud City Gossip, our typical time where we run through the news, announcements, etc. that have come out from Star Wars over the past week. However, I kind of already done that. If you are already subscribed to Force Ghost Conversations, I hope that you've listened to our Star Wars Celebration 2023 recap episode, which came out this past Wednesday, where for an hour and a half, I literally monologue all 11 pages of notes I took during the 4 days of Star Wars Celebration. If you missed out on any of that, that's where you need to go first to hear all the news. So that's where you can find all the major updates, my thoughts on the panels, the news announcements from the movies, reactions to the trailers. It's all jam-packed into one action-packed episode. And I think it's really good. Not to toot my own horn too much there, but I think it was a fun episode. I would certainly listen to it. A lot of fun to do all that, to geek out, and just to remember all the goodness that is Star Wars Celebration. I think you will enjoy it too, so be sure to go check it out when you are able. So, of course, since all the news has been covered for this past week, and since they weren't going to wait to release any news after Star Wars Celebration there, we don't need to do any Cloud City gossip this week, because it's already been covered. So, just a reminder, go check out the news there. Otherwise, we'll be back on the other side of the short break with our spoiler discussion of The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, The Spies. So you've been forewarned if you haven't watched the episode yet. Now's your time to pause it, go watch it on Disney+, and then come right back to this moment in time. All right? After this short break, we'll be right back to discuss The Mandalorian. Welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. Let's get into this pivotal episode of The Mandalorian. It was teased during Star Wars Celebration during the Lucasfilm Showcase panel about how epic these remaining 2 episodes were. Rick Famuyiwa was right out on stage there saying, you're going to start to see things coming together, where we were going with things, wrapping things up. And I tell you what, I could see the roadmap forming already. Things in this episode started clicking for me right from that start. That cold open was probably the best in The Mandalorian of all the seasons, if you ask me. As a fan of the expanded universe of Star Wars, as a fan of Disney's canon, like the current canon, modern canon, if you will, reading the books and the comics and learning about this post-Return of the Jedi period, I felt very vindicated as a fan that took the time to do all that stuff, to get my, you were rewarded basically for knowing all that stuff. And if you didn't know that, I mean, now you're caught up to speed in many ways, but you can also go back and look at those great stories to acclimate yourself to all this if you want to. It's entirely up to you, but it's certainly available and it's an option. And this starts off with this incredible cold open. Of course, Aaliyah Kane kicks us off in this episode by contacting none other than Moff Gideon. We've been wondering where he's at all season. We finally got the answer. Someone got him out from being within the clutches of the New Republic. And evidently, it wasn't Mandalorians as we surmised. It was Stormtroopers, Phase 2 Dark Troopers, using Beskar alloy steel for their new armor. The Super Trooper army that Moff Gideon has been creating here on Mandalore, underneath the shroud of what was the remnants of this once incredible society and civilization. Now his home for his experiments and for creating this master army that is supposed to bring about a new era of peace and order to the galaxy, according to him. Taking the best of the cloners, of the Jedi, of the Mandalorians, and combining it all together into some incredible super army. Wow. I mean, come on now. Anywho, Aaliyah Kane, who was one of Moff Gideon's communications officers before, has now infiltrated the New Republic. And we surmised earlier on that she may be someone who is playing both sides here, you know, a spy from the inside. And that is evidently true. She has certainly been spying on the activities of the New Republic and then reporting it back to Moff Gideon. So that's how she knew that the New Republic wouldn't intervene on Navarro. Moff Gideon was behind the pirate attacks. It seems like he's been behind shadow puppeteering so much of what's been going on in The Mandalorian. It'll be so interesting to do future rewatches of this series in order to see, oh yeah, I see that through line there. That's exactly Moff Gideon right there. So she's one of the spies in this episode. And we'll talk about the concept of spies. They didn't call it the spy. They called it the spies, as in plural, multiple. She tells them that it wasn't the New Republic. It was a group of Mandalorians. Mandalorians that were of ideological difference together that have now come together. But led by Bo-Katan. And they're amassing an attempt to take back Mandalore. She informs him of this, and I literally shakes him to his core. You can tell it's like something that he never expected. And he must report it to, frankly, what is one of the coolest things I've seen in Star Wars lately, which is this Shadow Council, as they called it, which showcases around this round table the warlords of the remnants of the Empire. And they talk extensively about their plans in this portion here. They're supposed to seem like they're just random warlords out there in the galaxy controlling random sectors, so they aren't seen as a threat to the New Republic. They're just kind of nuisances with hang on to some semblance of the past. They don't consider them to be an organized unit waiting to strike at the right time and doing things behind the scenes that lead to where we're at in episode 9 with the Final Order, with the First Order, with Exegol. Brendel Hux is in this episode. And of course, it's played by Donald Gleason's brother. It's kind of funny because that is, of course, he's played by Brian Gleason. And Donald Gleason plays General Armitage Hux in The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy. And that's his father, right? Brendel Hux is his father and one of the remaining members of the Empire that was at the Battle of Jakku. And fought very hard in the Aftermath trilogy. And of course, in Phasma, we see that a bit more with his involvement with the First Order. Like, this is a character that's involved all the way up to basically the events of The Force Awakens. And they talk about Project Necromancer. and cloning. And he says that's, Moff Gideon says that cloning, that's your area of the woods. I'm not involved in that at all. Or at least I'm not trying to be involved. They're deceiving each other. It's part of the dark side path of it all. Project Necromancer, you gotta think. Because they talk about leadership. That is the resurrection of Emperor Palpatine. That's right there. I'm surprised that Legion General Pride is not involved in this Shadow Council at this moment in time. I was fully expecting a younger, General Pride, maybe they de-age Richard E. Grant to be there. Project Necromancer. And you know how I can tell that's probably related to Palpatine at all? Just, by looking at the title of it. Because that's a certain choice that really invokes a thought in my mind. Many of you know that I am also an ardent fan of Tolkien's work. Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Those are my favorite books of all time. I can watch those movies any second of any day, rewatch it over and over again. If I didn't really love Star Wars as much as I do, I might be doing a Tolkien podcast. That's how much I love the world that he's built. I love those characters. I love reading about it. I love being involved in it. It's a thing that I do in my spare time. You got to have some hobbies outside of Star Wars, am I right? In The Hobbit, in the book and in the movie trilogy, the Necromancer is what they call Sauron before they know that it is Sauron. And then is resurrected through that Necromancer process in Dol-Guldur. I hope I can pronounce it right. I always get like a little skittish when I try to pronounce that word for whatever reason. And that's what brings it back. And then he's brought back, and he kind of goes off to Mordor to rebuild again. So it's interesting that they're using that, because I see a direct line to that, meaning evil villain, evil bad guy coming back. Palpatine. That's right there. I mean, as Moff Gideon is walking past his Phase 2 Dark Troopers going to the Shadow Council, you see him walking past these like cloning vats that are kind of similar to what you see in Exegol, where there are the rejected Snoke bodies, if you will. It's all there. They even talk about Praetorian Guards, of course, the armed guards that are protecting Supreme Leader Snoke, and he requests a few of them. Even Captain Pelion is there. Yes! Sing it for the praises in the back. All the people that have read Heir to the Empire. That fantastic trilogy of books from the 90s. Timothy Zahn. The Return of Thrawn in those books. And you gotta think, this just really lines up with that Ahsoka trailer. Seeing Thrawn in live action. I mean, Captain Pelion is basically Thrawn's right-hand man. You heard about him in Star Wars Rebels. There's a reference to Pelion in that finale episode. And now we got to see him not only in live action, but he's singing the praises. We got to wait. There's absolute secrecy that needs to be here until Grand Admiral Thrawn is ready to return. They're not ready to announce themselves yet to the New Republic, to announce themselves as this great amassed threat. So this is really, in this episode, you're getting a sense of where we're going with all these through lines. From The Mandalorian and definitely from Ahsoka. And maybe Book of Boba Fett comes into play here. Maybe this Empire initiative is somehow in league with the Pikes and what they were doing on Tatooine. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to find out. But I absolutely loved all of that. I thought it was excellent. It was a great way to start this episode. And of course, to continue some of these wonderful through lines that have been, I know people have been wondering, like, what's the deal? What's going on with all of this? And now we're finally getting a sense of where this is all going. It's leading to this climactic battle that is going to be this movie that Dave Filoni is going to direct, that got announced at Star Wars Celebration this past week. It's all starting to line up, folks, and you got to see the grand picture that's taking place on the table in front of us. One of the other things I want to talk about from this episode is the strength and leadership of Bo-Katan. It really stood out how she was such a calming presence between these two ideological differential factions of the Mandalorian culture. She asks and she implores that for her group that they're leading to retake Mandalore to set up this base camp, that they have groups from both sides partaking. One's without helmets, one's with helmets on. She talked candidly about her surrender to Moff Gideon the first time and how she thought it would be enough so that she could save her people without being totally dismantled. Now, of course, he went against his word, but she had no other options in front of her. It was either going to happen or she could take the chance in front of her, which you have to respect in some ways. And with that other group of Mandalorians that they find that has somehow been living on this planet in some sort of pirate's lifestyle, featuring one of the captains from Top Gun Maverick, which I thought was really cool. She says some of these great lines here. Mandalore has always been too powerful for any enemy to defeat. It is always our own division that destroys us. Love it. There's so much wisdom in that sentence there. Not even just for Mandalorian culture alone, but for all cultures. What divides us only separates us further. It creates factions, ideological differences. And if we can't come to the table, talk to each other, respect one another, how are we going to survive? How is anybody meant to survive after that? Bo-Katan is seeing a new way forward. She's not really downing anybody's ideology. She in fact embraces. She walked both ways for a little bit there. And you see how the change has affected her. Her poise, her demeanor, her strength, her resiliency. Her ability to be humble. A leader talking about surrender, talking through the decisions, explaining process, caring for people. That's what you want to see in a leader. I firmly believe this is one of the leadership traits that I've always taken to heart. I read it in this book from a very respectable person in my life. Good leaders are always humble. They would never ask anybody to do anything that they wouldn't first do themselves. And that's really the main tenet of leadership to me. I don't see Bo-Katan doing anything that that she wouldn't ask any. Like if she asked people to do stuff, she wouldn't do that herself, right? That's where people grow dissent or hatred towards leaders, because they see them sitting on a high hill, right? They see them doing nothing. People are toiling away, and there's this disconnect. But I don't see a disconnect at all with Bo-Katan. And even Din Djarin comes in with that very excellent quote about why he is behind her. This was great. This is like Aragorn, Boromir level stuff in The Lord of the Rings, right? I would have followed you all the way, my captain, my king. What means more to me is honor and loyalty and character. These are the reasons I serve you, Lady Kryze. Your song is not yet written. I will serve you until it is, as he puts his hand on his chest and beats it. That was incredible. I almost got emotional. I got chills running down my body. It was a powerful moment in Star Wars. Believing in leadership and seeing someone that you can get behind. I mean, how can you be defeated? Now, of course, they get defeated a little bit here because they didn't expect to run into this enemy. Of course, they expected to run into a variety of villainous things on the planet's surface, but not the actual Empire. That wasn't on the table at all. I gotta say, let's talk about spies right now. Of course, Aaliyah Kane is absolutely one of them. We got that answer for sure. But what's the deal with the armor? I've seen the speculation online. I've seen the thoughts about, her going up into space, back to the fleet with those that are wounded. It's convenient timing-wise, for sure, that's just before they get to the forge. And the camera does linger on her a bit. So I think maybe it's a red herring. Maybe it's not. What do you think at home? I think this is an appropriate place for debate and lively discussion as we head into the finale next week. Do you think the armor is another spy? Maybe there's multiple spies. Maybe there's spies on every side. Maybe there's a spy on the inside of the Shadow Collective. It's hard to say. Now, it's hard to say. I'm not necessarily in the camp that she is a spy. I think it's definitely like hinted at as a potential. Again, it could be a red herring entirely. But the helmet with the spikes, I mean, you never know. Moff Gideon's armor had some spikes on it too. At least the helmet, similarly. But she beats up stormtroopers at the end of season 1. And you would have think that maybe she would have said something, at least been a bit more divisive earlier. I don't know. I don't know. There's definitely a possibility. But maybe they definitely knew what they were doing when they were calling it the Spies. They wanted us to have this conversation. They wanted us to have these debates about it. I don't know. We'll definitely have to put a pin in that one, because I don't want to go down too far the speculation path, because I think I'm okay with just about any answer at this point. Well, we'll open up the conversation on our social media channels for sure, and let's talk about it there. What about Moff Gideon, though? Of course, he's like creating a brand new Mandalore in his own image, if you will. He even says, Mandalore will live on in me. And he said, I will create an army that will bring order to the galaxy with the best of the cloners, the Jedi, the Mandalorians. There's something to be taken from each of those attributes and put it into one incredible soldier. I don't know what's the deal with that. I mean, he took Grogu's blood. He's definitely looking into some cloning information here, taking the Beskar, jetpacks. I don't know. He's also going to try and destroy the fleet there. He said, let loose the TIE interceptors, let loose the bombers. Let's take out this fleet. The narcissism of Moff Gideon is definitely on full display in this episode. He even says that like incredible line there to Bo-Katan when her group is cut off with the blast doors, with a snarky remark too. Bo-Katan, we have to stop meeting like this. I mean, come on, how menacing. He talked about that on the live stage at Star Wars Celebration, Giancarlo Esposito, about how he's able to bring some of those maniacal mannerisms to the character. Kind of similar to like the, you have something I want, or I just want his blood, right? Those little jabs that really get under the skin, or just like make you go like, ooh, he's definitely a villain. He's a bad guy. We have to stop meeting like this. Yeah. Ooh, that's confidence. That's narcissism right there, folks. He definitely thinks there's no possibility that he's being beaten right now. He even flies away and brings in his Praetorian Guards. He doesn't care how many of his own troopers get taken out by Paz Vizsla at the end. And yes, the last stand of Paz Vizsla. What a powerful Mandalorian soldier. All the way to the end. He got his warrior's death. He laid his life down for the creed, for the survival of his people. And he almost won at the end. I mean, talk about a Boromir fight. A person that was adamantly, and look at that arc. It's very similar to a Boromir, right? He was calling Din Djarin an apostate earlier in the season. He was trying to win the Darksaber from him. And then they're fighting together. He's dying with him. He's fighting with Bo-Katan. He's fighting with, alongside people that have different ideologies than him. And he's willing to lay his life down for them. His own son. He's not going to see his son again, who just took the creed. Really incredible stuff there. And of course, Paz Vizsla, voiced by Jon Favreau, the showrunner for The Mandalorian, and being a part of this universe with Dave Filoni at the helm. He doesn't stand a chance, though, against those Praetorian Guards. And you got to imagine, maybe we'll see some Darksaber action next week. Because we got to get Din Djarin back. He's taken into the briefing room. Who knows what they're going to do to him in that briefing room? I gotta say, here's my one thing. Bo-Katan, use that Darksaber, girl. Use it. You got it. Learn to use that blade. It's a weapon at your disposal. It's an incredible weapon. Use it to fight. You could have frankly tried to open up those blast doors earlier with that thing. I think I was just sitting on the chair screaming, "Use the dark saber, girl! Come on, use it!" Ugh, tragic. Where do they go after this? I don't know. Of course, Grogu, and this is where I'll end with my discussion on this episode here. He's an IG-12. What? Not only did they reforge IG-11, but they made it so that a user is in charge of like the maneuvering. So Grogu is literally walking around in IG-12, almost like a Gundam type of robotic creature here. And also he gets to use the vocal the voice box to denote yes and no. So Grogu can finally communicate with us. And he let his voice be heard, that's for sure. I can only imagine we're going to get some fighting sequences with Grogu inside IG-12 next week. Yeah, that's going to be wild. That's going to be wild. It's already serving some great comedic bits with the yes and the yo and the no. I've seen the TikTok already of it using Pedro Pascal saying yas instead of yes. That was funny. Go check out that TikTok if you will. But the thing that I want to conclude this particular episode on, that I wanted to share some thoughts on, is the fight between Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves, where they're literally going to fight until one either dies or one concedes to the other. And Bo-Katan says, "I can't step in." But Grogu, he steps in. He gets between them. Pacifism. Don't fight each other. There is always another way. That's so Jedi-like. Even Din Djarin comments on that. He didn't learn that from me. She says, Bo-Katan says to him, "You taught your apprentice well." He didn't learn that from me. He learned that from Luke Skywalker, or at least maybe at the Jedi Temple. Now he has some of his memories back in regards to his time before Order 66. Just like Luke Skywalker throwing down his lightsaber in Return of the Jedi. "I'm a Jedi like my father before me. You failed, Your Highness. I won't turn to the dark side." That's Grogu stepping right in there. Why are we needlessly fighting each other? There's no need. Over a little quarrel? Get together, guys. There's a calm serenity to that moment. And everyone realizes, yeah, this was stupid. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? I loved it. I loved it. I love how it shows that Din and Grogu can be a real bridge between multiple worlds in this universe here. Even Bo-Katan mentioned earlier, I knew Jedi. We weren't always at war with each other. It wasn't always so bad. We can coexist. And Grogu is an example of that. He knows the Force. He knows how he can maneuver it, how he can use it. But he's also learning the ways of Mandalore. And maybe it's his destiny to wield the Darksaber one day and to rule Mandalore. I don't know. Who knows? We'll have to find out one day. But in the meantime, they're in some dire straits here. The fleet's about to be attacked. Din Djarin is in the briefing room. And there's a small band of Mandalorians going to be chased probably by Praetorian guards and these Phase 2 Dark Troopers. I can't tell you how excited I am for next Wednesday because I think this next one is going to be real spectacular. I'm going to be certainly avoiding all of social media that next Wednesday just so I don't miss out on things or get spoiled to things like I have in the past. But I can't tell you. I am so excited for this upcoming episode of The Mandalorian. I hope that you are at home as well. What did you think about this episode? Are you just excited about the Shadow Collective, Captain Pelion, Brennel Hux, Moff Gideon's return, Grand Admiral Thrawn mentions? Where's that all going? Obviously, it's leading to this Filoni movie, but where's it going to lead into in the interim? How is our band of heroes going to get off Mandalore, or at least into a state of protection on Mandalore? I don't know. It's going to be a wild ride. But let's talk about it on social media here because there's a lot to engage upon and to have these wonderful discussions among friends, which I consider all of you to be. So, with that, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. Again, be sure to go check out our Star Wars Celebration 2023 recap episode to catch up on all the news from last weekend's convention so that you're up to date with all that fun stuff. I don't think you want to miss out or to be left behind when it comes to that. So, be sure to go re-listen to that episode if you can. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast on your site of choice so we can continue to grow seats around the proverbial campfire that is Force Ghost Conversations and to continue growing this fun community that we've got going here. You can also share the show on your social media sites, tag a friend, share it with your friend, your colleagues, your coworkers, your family members. If they are into Star Wars, we have a place for them here at Force Ghost Conversations. If you also want, you can hit us up on our social media channels. We're available at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Hive. Just search Force Ghost Conversations and we'll be there in some capacity. Additionally, if you want to support the show further, you can do so through monetary means. We're available on Patreon. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to a whole ton of Force Ghost Conversations goodies, including extra episodes, invitations to ask questions on the show, and to get your name read, which is a lot of fun stuff. So be sure to check out that. There'll be a link in the episode description for you to see the various tiers offered and select one that works best for you. We also have merchandise. Our TeePublic store is ripe with several designs, our Willow logo, our Indiana Jones logo, and of course our Star Wars logo. So if you want to literally wear your support of Force Ghost Conversations in a variety of means, they have t-shirts, hoodies, baby wear, mouse pads, pillows, all that stuff. You can go check out our TeePublic store, which of course, again, a link is in the episode description, and you can make that your own. So with that, everybody, that'll conclude this week's episode of Force Ghost Conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun geeking out about this episode of The Mandalorian, and we'll be back next Sunday with our finale discussion of The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 8. I don't know what it's called yet, but I know Rick Famuyiwa is directing it, and he's going to bring it on home here. So until then, folks, may the Force be with you. Take care.